ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about ThunderCats. Oh! Number 2, written by Declan Shalvey, with art by Drew Moss and color by Chiara DeFrancia and Martina Pignadoli. Okay, so this is the issue that when I sat down with both Declan and Drew to talk about this upcoming issue of ThunderCats number 2, a lot of the things that were kind of hinted at and teased in that interview are coming to pass in some ways that even kind of talking to them about it, even kind of getting some inside baseball on it, there are definitely some things going on here that I am very excited for. Now, let's go ahead and jump right into them. One of the first things that I was really excited for when talking to Declan and Drew about this was you wanted to know whether or not we were going to get more character development between Liono and both Wily Cat and Wily Kit. I wanted to know, like, how do you play this up? Because, well, yes, the original animated series touched on this in some very small and let's just be honest, some very shallow ways. I wanted to see what Declan was going to be able to do in terms of writing up something that is a bit more modernized and just makes a lot more sense. And for those wondering what I'm talking about, the character Liono, as I talked about in my previous video for ThunderCats number 1, and if you didn't for whatever reason see that video, you can check it out right up here. But in ThunderCats number 1, one of the things I talked about was a lot of people tend to forget Liono is not an adult despite having the body of one. Going back to the original animated series, it was made very clear that Liono was a young boy, and the fact that his stasis pod malfunctioned caused him to age up towards being an adult. And while he's an adult, his mind is still that of a child's. Liono is about roughly the same age as Wily Cat and Wily Kit. They grew up together, they're friends, and the fact that Liono is an adult now and he feels that he has the weight of leading the ThunderCats in the wake of the destruction of Thundera and now trying to find a place for them on Third Earth, it's weighing on him tremendously, and you can see it, and it's also weighing on him in such ways that are also kind of playing up his youthfulness and immaturity. Yes, he knows he has to step up to the plate, but at the same time, he's also not doing it in exactly the way that he probably should, and that makes sense because he doesn't know how to deal with this sort of stuff, and he doesn't have Jaga there to guide him and mentor him. It is now incumbent upon Panthro to teach Liono how to be a leader, and what's very interesting here is how Liono and Panthro are butting heads here, where under normal circumstances they would probably get along just fine, but now Panthro has to see himself as a father figure to Liono. And all the while, this just makes things awkward between Liono and his friends Wily Cat and Wily Kit. They don't know how to deal with him. And one of the things I do appreciate that Declan does here in this issue is that he makes it very clear that while yes, they're annoyed with Liono, like they don't really like how he's acting, but they understand why he is acting the way he's acting, and they know that all they can do is be there for him and not antagonize him in any way. They want to be his friends, they want to be there, but they know he's gonna have to come to them first, and they just have to be more understanding. And in a kind of roundabout way, it's showing their maturity in how Liono's being forced to grow up is kind of forcing them to grow up a little bit too. I know some people probably won't see it that way, but that's what I kind of took away from this, and I really like. Oh man, I really like what Declan is doing here with this. This is honestly what I wanted to see when we were talking about were we going to see the relationship between Liono and Cat and Kit being like aged up some or going in a more serious direction. This is what I was hoping for, and here we are. Another thing I like about this too is just how much respect is getting put on Slide's name. For those who may or may not remember the original animated series, Slide was never really a character you took terribly seriously. He is a bad guy, but he was also more of a henchman and lackey, despite being the leader of the mutants. But what I love about this is that Declan and Drew are digging a little bit more into the lore and the history of the mutants and kind of showing us how their community structure works. The fact that they have a very Darwinist society that if you show any signs of weakness, you will be removed from your role in leadership, and the fact that, yes, while he did put one over on Liono, breaking the Sword of Omens and leaving Liono dejected to stare at the pieces of a broken Sword of Omens, Liono got one in on him too. It wasn't quite the one-sided victory that it looked like in the first issue. Slithe was wounded by Liono, and now he is trying to hide his wounds from his fellow soldiers who are dogmatically following him. However, he knows if they find out that he's wounded, that he's showing any sign of weakness, he must be destroyed and a new leader must be crowned. And this is solid booking on Declan's part, because not only are we seeing Slithe shown to, even in his wounded state, still being a force to be reckoned with, he can still be caught slipping. And we don't really know exactly how, why, or who it is that catches him off guard after he gets attacked by a giant squid monster, but I'm pretty sure we'll learn very soon. The other interesting thing that's going on here in this issue is the new character, Calica. Now, when I was talking to Declan and Drew about Calica, this new character being introduced, a new ThunderCats character who is not technically a ThunderCat, because to be a ThunderCat, that implies royalty, and this character is not that. And I'm wondering exactly what is her deal, because there's a lot of different things that could be going on here. She gives us a pretty, as Panthro would say, convenient story for who she is and why she was hidden away on Slithe's ship. The real story is probably going to be something that is way more interesting than what it is she actually told us, but she, for all intents and purposes, lets us know that she lived on a farm, and only did she live on a farm, but that her family was still there on Thundera when it was destroyed, and while she didn't know that Thundera was destroyed, that's pretty much the long and short of it when she tells Liono where her family was and he explains to her what happened to Thundera. That pretty much lets us know her parents are very likely gone. But what makes things more interesting here is that, and Declan hinted at this in our interview, is the fact that Calica is going to have an effect on Liono in a way that only a woman could on a kid who inhabits a man's body. He is having feelings for Calica, even if he doesn't realize it, and he's being more aggro towards the other ThunderCats in defense of Calica because of this. And whether or not this is Calica having a direct effect on him, or if it's just Liono's hormones going full steam ahead, that is yet to truly be revealed. But honestly, just based on the fact that Liono is a preteen kid trapped in a adult man's body, and he was already likely going through puberty if you're going by human standards, then yeah, it's safe to say this guy was already a ball of raging hormones before he got aged up to an adult, and now it would just be even worse. And the other ThunderCats see it as well. Chitara and Tigra both end up talking about this later on. And I say all this because, yes, once again, this could just as easily be Liono. This could have nothing to do with anything mystical or magical going on here. But one thing that is mystical and magical is how Mumra seems to be puppeteering things from behind the scenes. I asked Declan when we talked about this, what is the deal with Calica? Are we looking at a Mumra situation? For those who may or may not remember, the first time the ThunderCats interacted with Mumra, it was actually through a disguise that he was using when he tricked the ThunderCats into believing he himself was from Thundera and that his name was not Mumra, but Pumra. And the ThunderCats would later learn towards the end of the episode that Pumra was in fact a villain, that it was actually Mumra in disguise. And when we get to the end of this issue, we see that Mumra is controlling her in some way. Now, it's not necessarily stated whether this was Mumra's plan all along, because once again, the mutants don't really seem to be aware of Mumra. And because Mumra had been asleep for so long, I wonder if for whatever reason he just became aware of Calica and is piloting her from there. That is the thing I wonder, because at this particular point in time, and Declan was even very clear in stating that in the comic so far, Slithe has not met Mumra. So there's no reason for Slithe to have brought Calica for Mumra, or is already transporting Calica at the behest of Mumra. So yeah, the fact that this is all going on, it kind of seems like a very perfect storm of happenstance. Calica just happened to be at the time trafficked by the mutants, and Mumra just taking advantage of it, because one of the things we know is that he has a connection to the Eye of Thundera. And because Liono, even though the sword is broken, the Eye of Thundera is still intact, he's still able to use sight beyond sight. This is how Liono becomes aware of Calica's existence. Mumra is doing the same. Mumra very likely saw what Liono saw and is just working with what he's got. But at the end of the day, it's safe to say Calica in and of herself is not a bad character. She is just a pawn in all of this, and I can't wait to see. This is one of those deals where it's very reminiscent of when you watch movies or TV shows where there's a character who is being mind controlled, and you get used to a character being one way, and then later on when the character is no longer mind controlled, you get used to how the character might act after the fact because it's not going to be the same. I feel like we're going to be looking at a very similar situation in regards to Calica. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.